I love this woman's answer in verse 27. She said, "Well, yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." She says to Jesus, "I'm not asking you to give me the whole meal. I just want a crumb from your table. I'm not asking you to abandon your mission to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. You can be the Messiah of the Jews. I'm not asking you to change any of that. I'm only asking for a crumb from your table, a scrap. Just have mercy on me and heal my daughter." Again, the contrast between this woman of Canaan living in Tyre and Sidon and the Jewish people. She's begging for a crumb from the master's table while the Jewish people were given the entire feast, and they rejected it. They slid it back across the table and said, "No thanks." And here's this woman like a dog at the table. "Just give me a crumb." If you own a dog, you know what that's like, where your dog just sits there, with these sad eyes. "Please, anything." And that was this woman. "I just want a crumb." You can still be the Messiah. You can still be the shepherd of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I'm not asking you. I'm not getting into the theology of it here. I just need a crumb. I'm in a desperate situation here. Then Jesus answered and said to her, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire." And her daughter was healed from that very hour. Now look at verse 29. Then Jesus departed from there. Jesus went all the way to the region of Tyre and Sidon to minister to this one desperate woman. 35-mile journey through the mountains on foot just to minister to this one person. And then he leaves. And he begins to head back to the Galilee. Again, through the mountains, 35 miles, on foot. And if I'm one of the disciples, I'm thinking, wait, we're leaving? We walked all this way, and now we're walking back? Jesus, this is the Middle East. It's hot. What are you doing? But that's Jesus. Jesus will go out of his way to minister to one person in need. Notice in verse 29, it says that he skirted the Sea of Galilee. Mark's gospel tells us he went to the other side of the Galilee to the Decapolis. You remember the Decapolis from chapter 10. The 10 Gentile pagan cities on the other side of the Sea of Galilee where Jesus healed the demon-possessed man of Gadara. And do you remember after he healed the demon-possessed man of Gadara, he told that man to go home to his friends and tell them about the wonderful things God has done for him and how he had compassion on him. And Mark 5:20 says the man departed and began to proclaim in all of the Decapolis the things that Jesus had done for him. And that guy was the only missionary in the Decapolis. He's the only believer. He doesn't have a Bible, doesn't have a gospel tract, nothing. All he knows is that his life was a mess, his life was a wreck, he was demon-possessed, and Jesus Christ delivered him and set him free. And he's traveling around the Decapolis with this message. If anybody had a theological question for him, he couldn't answer it. If anybody said, well, what about here where it says this in the Bible? And I don't know. All I know is I was a mess, my life was a wreck, and Jesus Christ delivered me. Remember, it says of the demon-possessed man that after Jesus delivered him, he was clothed and seated and in his right mind. And that was his testimony. So now, Jesus returns to the Decapolis, that same region where he left this man to go tell everybody what God had done for him. Now Jesus returns to that region, and look what happens in verse 30. Jesus comes back, and then great multitudes came to him, having with them the lame, the blind, the mute, the maimed. The maimed always stands out to me in that list. These are people that they're disabled by some injury they've received. And many others, and they laid them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. Verse 31, so the multitude marveled when they saw the mute speaking, the maimed made whole. the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And notice what it says, and they glorified the God of Israel. These are Gentile pagans in the Decapolis. They worship other gods. The God of Israel is not their God, but now they glorify the God of Israel. So that demon-possessed man of Gadara that was delivered must have done a pretty good job of spreading the news about Jesus, just based on the reception he receives when he comes back. So now, verse 32, Jesus called his disciples to himself, and he said, I have compassion on the multitude because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. Now this sounds just like the feeding of the 5,000 back in chapter 14. And you would think, after seeing the feeding of the 5,000 in chapter 14, the disciples would say, we have been in this exact situation once before. We know what Jesus will do. Jesus will just do that thing with the bread and the fish and make filet-o-fish sandwiches for everybody. This is going to be amazing. But look what happens in verse 33. Then the disciples said to him, where could we get enough bread in the wilderness to fill such a great multitude? This is what they said last time. This is impossible. Where could we get enough bread to feed all these people? And we can read this and we can say, how could they not see that this is exactly like what happened in chapter 14?